Yeah.
My favorite.
It's Judd's Hockey Show.
It's not the Judd Hockey Show. It's Judd Hockey Show, the week of the trade deadline, which comes up at 2 o'clock on Friday. It's Judd, it's Jessi, it is AJ. So, Jess, we did a post-game show on Sunday and talked about what Bill Guerin had to say in his pregame press conference. I want to get your thoughts as you sort of parse through those quotes, some of which I'm sure were very, very true, and some of which were, as Bill kept saying, it's fluid. I don't know. Do you think we are looking at another potential substantial move before 2 p.m. on Friday? What does your gut tell you about this?
No, I don't think so. I just, unless, and Judd, you did a good job at following up with this, unless it does come out that Eriksson and or Kaprizov will not be ready to go for the regular season. I just don't think they're going to go $1 in, $1 out without those two needing to go to LTIR, which means no return, which means you can use that cap space. I think Bill Guerin was very happy with getting Nyquist, and again, he made the money work perfectly for him with the Preds retaining half of that salary. So no, it could happen where all of a sudden, you know what, Kaprizov's not ready. He's not going to, and we're going to find out Friday that that's the case, and then he goes and finds something. So I'm on the side of nope, he's done because he can't do anything else. I would be shocked, which I kind of like. I like being surprised once in a while. I like being right more, but I wouldn't mind being surprised.
We all do.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So here's my take here too. Bill left himself so much room though. Like he's, I think on one hand, he's genuinely tired of the questions. I think partially because Kaprizov's timeline got backed up. And so he had said, hey, he's going to have the procedure 4 to 6 weeks. He's going to be back good as new, right? Well, then the doctors came in and said, sorry, no, we were wrong about that. So I think that there's frustration that goes largely beyond the media asking him questions. But he left himself so much room. And I don't know if I can convince myself at the end of the day that Eriksson, Brodin perhaps, and Kaprizov are all back before. I think they could be back for the playoffs. But I just think it's interesting because at some point in time, too, if you're going to try to make a run, because they're going to make the playoffs, right? Like we all think that they're in the playoffs. They would have to just monumentally fall apart. So if that's the case, and you're talking about bringing Eriksson or Kaprizov back at like, let's say 60%, but then if you give more time, it bumps up to 70%. That's where I'm sort of struggling, Jess, mentally with. He gave himself so much wiggle room here. It almost feels like by Friday, if he says, you know what, they're both on LTIR, they're done for the regular season. And oh, by the way, I made a trade for take your pick. I'm not going to be that surprised.
Yeah. Yes. And
he won't be lying. Like he very clearly said, I don't know. And I don't think
annoyed. I did get annoyed when he was like, why do you guys keep asking? Like, because it's your two top players. Like, we need to ask every single day. This is what the people want to know. Or even when it was asked whether they've started skating. Well, is that important? Well, yeah, it's important. If they started skating, they're closer to returning than if they haven't started skating. Like, I mean, you're right. I guess in hindsight, I've heard it's not great. I think he would be the bigger one for me. That would be more likely, I guess, to move to LTIR, I believe.
Well, and Kaprizov's coming off this nebulous. We think it might be a hernia, a groin. Like that's another one too, where there's no. If the Kaprizov thing is okay, you get him back with 4 games left, right? And now he can ramp up, or it's like sort of concerned about that, but he could come back for the playoffs. I could just talk myself very easily into saying, let's get another player, which by the way, I don't really want, but I'm just, in Bill's, Bill operates, 1, he's impatient as hell. 2, he is, I think his frustration is not with us. I think it's with the situation. Yeah. But 3, if he wants to make a move, that's a very plausible way to make a move. And then, because he's not going to come out and say, hey guys, guess what? Come in close. I'm doing the Vegas thing. I am going to exploit a system, which by the way is very broken and stupid, but that's where I'm like, I don't I think he was trying not to lie because there's a very good chance. And I don't think, Jessi, that you're going to like the player. My point is, I think it's going to be
Brock Besser.
Brock Besser or Brock Nelson.
First of
Like,
all,
I
I
could-
like the players. I hate the narrative around it. Let's
the
we'll
trade.
clarify that, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just the
Well, you like your
exhausting.
kids, but you don't like your kids all the time.
All the time, right? Like I don't need to have the same conversation over and over about it. Like, hey, I know that Brock Besser's from Burnsville. I know that he played here. It's great. He's probably super excited to play back at XL Energy Center like he has been twice a year since he started his career. Like I can't stand the narrative around it all the time. It's cool. There's Minnesotans in the NHL. It's cool.
Age, what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, I'm still very much in the camp of, I just feel like both of those guys, you can get them in a few months here for not giving up any like future assets. But it really does come down to what they feel behind the scenes, where they are as a team. Like,
right.
If there was more like, if he was letting out more certainty about what they're expecting, I know he said to the media, like, hey, we're expecting them back before the end of the regular season. But also, like to Jessi's point, it's arguably your top two players. You're going to ask about them. Don't get frustrated when, that's the case. So the fact that there's like that like visible frustration, and honestly, it might just be because he's getting asked and he just doesn't have an exact date. But also, like, if I was him, I would be asking the doctors. Like, that would be like my first text every morning. It'd be,
But he is.
Dr. John, hey, what's the thing? And then second one, roll over. Hey, honey, good morning. How are you? Like, my first text would be, when are they getting back on the ice? So
he is. That's why he's pissed off.
Exactly. So the fact that there's that uncertainty, and we've seen this, especially with Kaprizov in the past, where they've had him try to come back a few games before the playoffs to get that ramp up period. And he just is not the same player. And granted, maybe different injuries, different recovery times. So who knows, maybe this with the surgery now has gotten him back to a place where he's 95, 98, 100%. So it's a completely different talking point, but that uncertainty just makes me feel uncertain about this week, because any move you make is going to come with a lot of question marks, where it seems like the more conservative, we're going to hold on to our chips, we're going to fold and wait for another big hand. That seems like the safer option, especially for the future of this team. Whereas, were they great earlier this season into December when they were atop the league? Yes, they sure were. But right now, just given the injury history, and it seems like no matter what happens, like it's very possible you acquire one of these guys and you trade big assets for it. Brock Nelson comes in here and he takes a shot off the wrist, and all of a sudden he's out the rest of the season with a broken wrist. Like, that would be the luck of this team, and that's just like a crazy hypothetical, but something like that can happen, and I just don't feel like one of those major additions necessarily moves the needle given who is all out. They're going to make the playoffs, but it feels like it should be a standard Minnesota Wild in and out situation. And then you rest and recover for the 25-26 season.
Alex
Jessi?
Tuck. Go get Alex Tuck. That's
I was
what
going to
want.
ask you,
Ricard
do you want?
Raquel. I would take Alex Tuck.
Would
Bring
you
him
ask?
back. It was I would like
Alex
Ricard
Tuck.
Raquel too. I like players that have offensive upside and defensive upside, and I think both of those guys. Plus, Tuck fits that size criteria. Yes, he's a winger. I understand they need to get stronger and bigger up the middle, but go get Alex Tuck. I think he's like 4.75 AAV.
Okay. I like him a lot.
Right?
Do you like Dylan Cousins, whose name keeps
I don't
coming
hate
up?
it. He'd be lower, a little lower. I probably would rather take a Brock Besser than a Dylan Cousins. Again, my biggest concern with Besser is the injury prone. But he's got so much upside as far as scoring capabilities, which I think is good. Brock Nelson is a solid up the middle. Dylan Cousins overall on my list would probably be 4 or 5. But Alex Tuck's slowly making his way up there, I think.
I like Tuck a lot. I like him a lot. And I do think that he is, and I don't know if the statistics back this up, I think he is a playoff type of guy as well.
Yeah, I could see that.
Like, he's a grimy, dirty player, which I like. And I don't mean he's a cheap shot guy. I mean, he'll go into the corners. He'll stand in front. Matt Boldy, I'm talking to you. He'll do the things that it takes to try to win really close, tough games, which is what the playoffs are. Age, go ahead.
You won't find out in Buffalo, so if you
No,
want to
hell.
learn that.
No, I mean, besides, like, he fits that role for sure, and you've seen it. in both the highs and the lows being him getting robbed by Brayton Holtby in the Vegas, Washington, what was that, game 6 or game 7? Like that would have essentially put them in front to, I think that would have been a go-ahead goal for them anyways to win the cup. So I like Tuck. He was one of the guys where when they made that expansion trade essentially to keep Dumba at the time, if my memory serves me correctly.
Yes.
Yes, right.
It was Dumba that they kept, and they lost Hala, right? Or did they lose Tuck? They traded one of the two.
They traded Tuck to Vegas so that they would take Hala.
2 for 1. No, it's oh my God,
that's what it was. No.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Dumba.
It was terrible.
Wow.
Dumba.
Huh.
Yeah.
For us.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't
I remember not liking it. I remember not liking it because I remember
Vegas
being like,
went to the
Alex Tuck
Stanley
is...
Cup on the backs of moronic general managers all around the league.
Yeah.
And then Seattle got screwed because people are like, we're not doing this again.
They should have. Seattle got what they deserved, which is you're not a very good expansion team.
Nobody said, hey, here's a Hall of Fame goaltender. Here's a Vezina Trophy winner. Here you go.
Oh, yeah.
And you're in Vegas on top of all things. Like,
and I was like, give him Zucker. Just give him Zucker. He's from there. It would be perfect fit. But I digress. Yes.
But Dylan Cousins, I mean, I think he's we kind of touched on this the other day. I think he's a spark plug player. He's a good player. To me, that seems like if you make that move, though, he's signed right now, I want to say through the at least into 2030 at $7.1 million a year. Like you're taking that on. That essentially says any plans you had of making an offseason acquisition come July 1st is out the door. That's Wild fans. That's your guy. I don't know if that's necessarily the guy I want to hitch the wagon to. That's where my mind goes. But Alex Tuck, sure. But you're probably going to have to then come the offseason. He's under retention for another season at $4.75 million. You're probably going to have to, and this is the point that I think Judd has probably brought up a handful of times since his suspension. Ryan Hartman, maybe that's where they say, hey, you're no longer here. We're going to buy you out. Alex Tuck is now your replacement in a sense.
Yeah. And you'd have to offer a lot. I mean, that was the biggest piece Buffalo got back in the Eichel trade, right? So I think that Buffalo will try to get everything and anything they can for him. But I don't know. I liked him so much when he was a young prospect. I was really disappointed to see the Wild part ways. More disappointed now that I'm remembering how they parted ways. But yeah, that's what I would say.
So if they make I guess what could be classified as a deadline hockey trade, Jessi, which means they get a player with turn back and it's not just a rental. How much do you factor in now Marco Rossi? So he's going to need a contract. I don't think he's going to break the bank, but he definitely is going to get paid. And I think he deserves it too. He's had a really nice year. But if they make a hockey trade, which gets them a piece back, and now it's like, okay, you got a piece that you're going to retain, and now you can re-sign Rossi, but this really takes away from your cap space, especially with the Kaprizov conversations. What does that mean to you that Rossi might be a domino that either is going to take up a bit of cap space and or be moved on the back of another trade for a guy that they and Bill Guerin especially likes more?
As I've said for the past, I believe 2 seasons, Marco Rossi is a guy that is very tradable, very movable. The unfortunate thing is I'm just saying it's coming to fruition. All right. This is what I've been telling you guys.
You were right. Okay.
I believe
you were right.
Even Elliot Friedman said in his 32 Thoughts something about how Marco Rossi might not be a long-term piece for the Minnesota Wild. I didn't listen to the full podcast, but I saw a clip shared of that because again, there's just something missing there between him and the organization, which I don't know what it is. I can't quite understand it because from the outside looking in, this kid has done everything you have asked him to do and more. He is one of your only consistent players this season because he hasn't been hurt. He's put up 40 points. He's having a very good year. And again, he's night in and night out. He's not like a Matt Boldy with the peaks and valleys. He is just a very strong centerman. He's learned and leaned into that physicality. However, because of that, I don't want to call it a rift because it's not necessarily a rift, but because of the difference between the organization and him, I think they would absolutely part ways. And I think Marco Rossi and his agent are probably going to come in wanting a decent amount of money, saying, hey, look at what I've done. Look at what I've done the past 2 seasons. I was in the conversation for being one of the top rookies in the league last year, and I've only grown on that. I've been your one true player who's putting up another 40 points this season. I've stuck around. I've done everything you guys have asked, so now I want to get paid. rightfully so again. But I think Bill Guerin's going to say, no, you know what? I want to shop on free agency. I want to get some big names. I want to get some size in here. And I think that maybe is the biggest knock on Rossi is he's smaller. He uses that, as Bill likes to say, he's got that FU mentality in him, but he's still a smaller dude. So I will not be saddened by it because I've just felt that this is something that's been a long time coming. I do love watching Marco Rossi play. I've loved seeing what he could do. And again, his consistency, he's a plus 16 this year, in addition to the points too, right? Like he's just been a really all around complete player. But I think there's, as I've always said, it's the value in that. There is value to move a piece like that, and you can get something good in return. So with money and with that, or with money coming in for Billy to spend and with the ability to move a valuable player, I think that's something that he would do.
My pushback on that would be he made a point to call out Marco Rossi's ability to go to the net and play as if he's a taller, bigger player. When he was during the presser before this Sunday's game, he made a point to say, look at what Marco does. Going to the net, he scored 21 some odd goals this season, and 19, whatever those, are going to the net. He's doing what the team is asking. It feels like, in my mind, when you have a player that, one, is as dedicated as he's been since being drafted, has overcome as much as he seems like a leader. He seems like a guy locker room wise is exactly who they want. It feels silly to me based on the growth and development you've seen over the last couple of seasons, especially now into what we're seeing this year where Jesse's talking about. He's been in the lineup nightly. He's a plus 16. He's taken on that top line center role. It would be silly to part ways with a player that checks essentially every other box just because he's not 6 foot something. That, and granted, Bill Guerin is a wheeler dealer. Like, nothing is off limits in his mind. So if they get, I'm not saying he's untouchable, but a move right now feels, when he's an RFA, he's 23. You can make a 3-year something deal to get him into that. Then you're an unrestricted free agent where you have time now. You're buying him at a decent bridge deal to, it's beneficial for him because he's kind of getting paid, but also it's not long-term where the team's going to be set with something for a while. You could then revisit that later on, and maybe he does continue to go and develop. And then it's like, wow, now he is untradeable in a sense. Or, okay, you know what? Now he still is not fixing. He's not fitting with the vision of this team. Now we do need to move him, but it's not an unbearable cap where if we want to move him, another team can't take him on. I can't wrap my head around this thought process of he's 5 foot whatever. They need size. That's the only reason why you want to move him. I know I'm talking in a circle here, but that's the only pushback I have on that. He seems to just do everything else, and he's been a quality player all season long.
I counter too. Is he a top 6 forward or top 6 centerman somewhere else? Is he in your top 6 elsewhere? Because if you go out and you got Jules Eriksson as your number 1, you're going to bump down Rossi then to 3rd or 4th line. And if he's going to be asking money, are you willing to pay a bottom 6 center the money that he's going to be asking too, right? Because again, I think that's going to be the number 1 target, whether it comes at deadline, whether it comes in free agency, is to get another true good elite centerman. And that should be Bill Guerin's goal. But then where does Rossi go?
Right. Well, and I do think that, like, it feels, Jessi, like what you've been saying for a year now is trending that way. And I don't know if John Hines must be in on the thought process too, because I feel like if John Hines was like, this kid is great, that probably would end the conversation. It doesn't feel like the conversation is ending. I think if you have a plan, like if you trade Rossi in a good trade and have a plan to go get a replacement who you think is a superior player because of size, I think that's great. I'm with AJ. I would hate to make the move just based on, well, he's not as big as we'd like, because he's done everything that you've asked. And that includes, he goes to the net now because he got stronger. Like I originally thought, okay, this kid's, pretty small and he doesn't look big and he's going to spend his career being frail. He's got stronger. And so he's done everything asked. And I could see a world where ideally he is your 2nd line center on a team. I could see that, maybe 3rd, but he could be 2nd. He's got skill. So it's interesting. I don't think it's a conversation, certainly by Friday. I think it's a conversation on July 1st for sure. Have you guys seen too? So, there's a ton of stuff out now. It's great, but names being tossed around as far as what teams, here's a list of teams interested in player X, Y, or Z. A name I've seen, and there's a bunch of teams attached here, so this is just one team, one guy. Have you guys seen Brad Marchand? The Wild, I've seen 2 speculative pieces, and I have no idea. They might have zero credence. But among the teams that would be interested, and there's like 6 teams, the Wild tied in. That one surprised me a lot just because I don't see it. But that would certainly be a fun experience, at least briefly, to watch Brad Marchand completely to watch him drive people up the ever freaking wall playing for the Wild. I don't think it's happening, but that did catch my eye yesterday.
He's week to week now too, I guess.
Oh,
His,
so he
injury
probably won't
after.
get traded. Okay.
Yep, so that could
Okay.
poo-poo that. Plus, I just kind of like the idea of him in Boston. Like, he just
I do
fits
too.
the Boston mantra, right? Like, I don't want anybody else to take him. I kind of just, I feel like he belongs there a little bit. I wouldn't mind covering him. Like, I've always loved when he
Great to
comes into town. He'd be super fun to cover. But yeah, it is interesting to hear a name like that being tossed around, especially with his tight connection in Boston, right? Like, it's always
Guerin
curious to see that.
Guerin probably loves him, is my guess. Like, I think he would love a guy like that. I know he's not big, but my God, like he is what I think he is what in a perfect world the Wild would like Hartman to be. Because he's a better player. He's a complete pest. And he's sort of, at least for now, it feels like he's learned to control. Like, he's still a pest, but he, 4 years back, licking guys' faces, stuff like that. Probably a bad idea. Yeah. So it feels age like he has reined in the annoyance thing, but it's still impactful. But I just thought that it was interesting to see a list or two with Marshy tied into the Wild.
Yeah, I mean, 36 years old, UFA after this year at $6.125 million. He is exactly what I think Ryan Hartman would want, like what the Wild want him to be. He has that temper on a leash. Like, he can definitely still, you let it flourish at times, and he definitely lets it off the leash every once in a while. But for the most part, he's used that to turn it more into like a motivational leadership type of rage, if that makes sense. Like, he's a pest, but he does it with his team, for his team. Whereas Ryan Hartman, it seems like, sometimes does it with the attention for the team, but it comes off more selfish, if that maybe is the correct way to phrase that.
And Brad used to have that problem more.
Oh yeah, so maybe that's still in Ryan Hartman's future. You never know. Maybe this suspension is the thing that's really going to set him straight. I don't know. In terms of what the Wild need, I don't know if Brad Marchand is the player for that. He's got the grittiness, he's got like the playoff repertoire and everything like that. But when it comes to what I think they need, sure, you add a Gustav Nyquist, and that's like a winger that can score. I don't know if a guy like Marchand is going to necessarily add more. I still am not sold on them getting any like high-end talent. So for me, that seems like a guy that's a step or two above the skill level where I'm probably setting my sights on. But also, I'm not Bill Guerin, so maybe that's right in his wheelhouse, and a guy around that kind of price, age, and everything. And maybe that just shifts, because now that he's week to week, like Jessi said, maybe that's off the table, and everybody's favorite homegrown lad, Brock Nelson, is back on the agenda.
I've got one on that. In fact, there was, I believe it was 6 trades proposed on ESPN.com yesterday, including one with Brock Nelson coming to the Wild. And it is let's just say this, it's a banger. In fact, it's such a banger that before I do that, you know what I would like to do? I'd like to enjoy a Padres beer. I'd like to enjoy a beer because it would help me chill and relax. And why is it going to be Padres? Because, as I've been talking about, all they do is beer. That's right. No crafty cocktails. No, we're trying this or we're trying that. Nope. Just good old-fashioned beer. The red, the Irish porter, the Irish dry stout, English IPA. I could go on, but right now, since I've got your attention, I'm going to tell you 6 packs available at Padres all throughout the Metro, Lunds and Byerly's, Kowalski's, Haskell's, Hy-Vee, Total Wine, Cub, MGM. Look at these beers. They're absolutely delicious. I've been talking up the red for quite some time, so give them a try. Padres, also their tap room, which is fantastic, located in the old Lando Knot Factory at the corner of Broadway and Central Avenues Northeast. Check that out as well. And Jessi, Now it's going to snow here on Wednesday. I realize that. But you know what? It's getting nice. It's warmer, and that snow is going to melt quickly. And that means golf season is right around the corner. And how can people get their games in shape?
I mean, you can go inside where the weather is always perfect at Swing Lab Performance Center in Lakeville, Minnesota. You mentioned beer, Judd. Beer and golf go hand in hand, and Swing Lab is now serving food and beverage. Play some simulator golf while enjoying a cold brew of your choice. They will be offering lunch specials and happy hour on weekdays, which will run from 3 to 6 p.m. $3 domestics, $4 seltzers. Weekends, you can grab a pizza. A bucket of beer is my personal favorite because it comes with 5 in a nice little bucket you can carry around for just $25. So great prices, great way to tune up your game on the course. Swing Lab Performance Golf down in Lakeville. Go have some fun.
There's something special. You're not wrong. A bucket of beer.
I love a bucket of beer. I love it.
I'm with you for that.
There's
It sounds very
carrying it
trite.
around. Yeah.
Yep. Well, and it comes to your table and it's just so like, yeah, there's a bucket of beer.
Kind of that communal.
grab a beer.
Similar to like it tastes better out of a bottle than a can.
True.
If you get bottles in a bucket, like you just the feeling of like it's like sword in the stone, just shing, crack it open. It tastes so much crisper.
There was a moment in my life when I was living in Colorado Springs, and it was the first time I was introduced to a bucket of beers, and it was like my new personality. I would just carry it around and make new friends, and my husband learned about that, and he was just like, "Oh my god!" I was like, "I love buckets of beers." Like it's just. So
I don't blame you. Yeah. I don't blame you. Okay, speaking of, so the one thing that Guerin was asked about pretty briefly on Sunday, which is, okay, you're saying as of right now, you're not going to probably make a big trade because you're counting on Kaprizov and Eriksson Ek coming back, and therefore Gus Nyquist, who was acquired on Saturday, is going to fill out the salary cap. Those guys come back, and everything is right with the world. Now, what Guerin was asked about was, are there third-party teams, though, that could take on salary? Which, if you recall, a couple of years ago, the Wild did. Ryan O'Reilly was traded briefly and became the best center in Wild history. They then facilitated a trade to Toronto and kept on some of his salary, so Toronto didn't take as big of cap hit. Dmitry Orlov, I believe, was traded from Washington to Boston, and the Wild got Orlov for all of 2 seconds for the same purposes. So the other question is, if you think Kaprizov and or Eriksson Ek is coming back, and don't forget Brodin as well, could you work out a trade and find a third party to take on some of the cash and the cap space from the new player? I give you ESPN 6 trades yesterday proposed for the deadline, including this one involving the Wild, the Islanders, and the Buffalo Sabres. Are you ready? The Minnesota Wild get Brock Nelson at 25% of his salary. So they can do that. Mm-hmm. It's not the full salary, it's 25%. The Islanders, and you're going to cringe here, but I'm going to tell you. Okay. The Islanders get the Wild 2026 first round pick. Keep in mind the 25 pick is gone, and Bill Guerin said he won't trade this. I'll believe it when I see it. But the 25 pick went to Columbus in the Jurček trade. So the Islanders get the Wild 2026 first round pick. They get Charlie Strommel, who was a first round pick who's now playing at Michigan State. They get a 2026 fifth round pick, and they retain 50% of Nelson's salary. The Buffalo Sabres then get, and I'm going to guess this is from the Islanders perhaps. The Buffalo Sabres get a 2026 third round pick, and they get 25% of Brock's salary as well. So at the end of the day, the Wild gets the player. They do take on 25% of his salary, but they pay a pretty damn big haul to the Islanders. And then Buffalo gets a little something to make this work. Thoughts on that proposed trade, which really at the end of the day, what hurts is your 2026 first round pick.
Yeah, that's the one I don't like. Again, because it's a first. I think you had mentioned Billy had said, he's like, I don't think I will. Now, granted, picks are picks, but I think to give it up for a player like Brock Nelson, who is on the older side too, I don't love it, because even while your draft selections in varying years are 5 years down the road, right? Brock Nelson's not going to be on this team in 5 years. Like, even if you were to pick him. So I don't love the first. Otherwise, I don't mind it.
So I'm out.
I'm out. I say no.
Okay, you're out.
I'm out.
I'm out on that too. I could probably be persuaded with a lengthy conversation if that was instead of the 2026 first, you bump that to the 2025 second that they still have, and then you just don't pick until the 4th round, and it's the Toronto Maple Leafs pick. That being said, that sort of draft day is something of like a team that's all in. And granted, I know they made a big trade and all this stuff, but a first for Brock Nelson. Frankly, I can part with Strammel. I mean, I know he's kind of had a resurgence
Yeah, let's
type
part
of
with
season.
Strammel. Let's go.
But
Good.
Jessi
Toss
doesn't
him in
want
with a
another
bag of
chance of a
pucks.
narrative for the Minnesota homegrown. She's like, get all of these guys out of the prospect pool. I want everybody out.
Star high school player here. Poor kid's got family here, but yes, I could see. I don't think the Wild would have any problem trading him. I don't think.
I don't think so either. I mean,
first round pick, which Billy said he wouldn't trade, that would be difficult. But here's my question, Jessi. As someone who covers Billy very closely, I got a question for you on draft picks, okay? Do you think, and Billy talked about this on Sunday, do you think that Bill Guerin is so comfortable with the prospect pool, which is good, which is very good, that he sincerely thinks that he can just trade picks? And by the way, he trades a lot of picks. Like, this is not just one first round pick. He makes trades that involve picks. Do you think that he just thinks that the farm system is so good that he doesn't need more high-end prospects right now? Or do you think that in reality, if you were to give him truth serum, he would use the Rams line from their GM a few years ago, which is F them picks?
Or Jim Rutherford's line too, right? Wasn't that kind of what he had
Yep.
told us? Like how Jim Rutherford was like, that better be a good effing.
Yeah.
That was a third round pick. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, what do you think his sincere view of draft picks is?
I think he has that much faith in Judd Brackett. I think it's not necessarily in the draft picks. I think he really trusts Judd Brackett to analyze and make those selections. Now, granted, the Charlie Strammel one, as we just pointed out, is a bit of a head scratcher, and that's a Judd Brackett situation. I don't know. I think I think he might care a little too much sometimes because he's told to. I don't know that he necessarily himself has an opinion on it within him, not to say he's being puppeted, but I think he doesn't know enough, right? I think he's smart enough to recognize a lot of times these guys aren't going to matter in our system for another 4 or 5 years. So I don't think he's as closely held on to them as it might appear sometimes. But also I think he recognizes, like, I don't know. I don't really, their guys are telling me this about XYZ, right? And you certainly you see the Connor Bedards lately come through. You see more generational talent come through in that first round than we have in years past. But short answer, I don't think he cares probably nearly as much as he leads on. I think he does covet a first round, as most people would, but beyond that, meh.
Yeah. It seems like he tries to talk about draft picks like he cares a lot, and I think he sees them as a means to an end to acquire guys that have been in the league that he likes. That's just my feeling, and I will give him credit. I do sincerely think this, and O'Connell with the Vikings is the same way. I think you're dealing with two guys that don't like to lie. And so I think they're pretty transparent. Like, they can say something and you're like, I'm not buying that. But, in the case like of the Sunday presser, like he never said, he kept saying, we expect Eriksson Ek and Kaprizov back, and Brodin, which is another whole thing because he continues to get hurt. But he never really said they're back. And I do think the Kaprizov timeline has been moved a lot. And that's not him. It just gets moved, which, by the way, it should be. If you have any questions about a guy's like groin or like that type of thing, assuming that that's it, I think you're 100% right to be careful. But I also think he sees an opportunity here, and I think I disagree with him, but I think he sees an opportunity here to potentially win, and I think he wants to take it. But the thing too is you've got three guys now. Like, in my opinion, Kaprizov, Eriksson Ek, and Brodin are all question marks. Like, I don't think we can assume. I mean, Brodin took a shot off the inside of the knee. He already broke his foot.
Cannot confirm that it was the block shot that caused the injury. Cannot confirm.
I'll tell you why. I think that was the latest dagger. I sent AJ a note before that happened on Friday. I said the Thursday game, Faber looks exhausted and Brodeen's not right. Brodeen had one of the worst games I've ever seen him have against Utah on Thursday. He was awful. Like Brodeen. So Faber, when he's tired, it stands out because he makes plays where you see them. The secret sauce to Brodeen's career is he's a fantastic player that you don't really notice. So when I'm seeing him like that, I think it was a 2-on-1 that he was the lone man back and he tried to break up the play. And the puck hits a stick, jumps off, and a goal is scored. He never misses that play. Mm-hmm. I think the shot probably finished him for the Colorado game, but I don't think he's been the same. And I don't blame him since he broke his damn foot. I don't think it's been the same, which again is a concern because he's a key player.
Well, thank you to Team Sweden for that.
Yeah, I think he did.
I know. I know. Do you know how close I came to asking on Sunday?
Therein is going to lie the problem because you do have guys exhausted. Marshy's hurt, not necessarily direct relation to Four Nations, but probably because he was exhausted and he's playing a little slower. You've got Matthew Tkachuk, who is out now long-term too. I mean,
Faber?
That's
not the same.
Yeah. I mean, it is something that is going to have to be considered again during the Olympics next year too.
I came this close to asking.
I was waiting for it. I was salivating
because he's already at his wit's end, and I feel like it's a hard press conference. I feel like it's more of an off the record discussion because he's not going to come out and rip it. But
especially
I mean,
when he's the GM of the US
exactly,
team, right?
Exactly, and he's being blamed for the McAvoy thing, and it's not going to be but. I mean, I was so close to say you and Age put it perfectly. You have dropped a playoff tournament into February.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, think about normally they are either for that time, like guys are on the beach like normal, or like last season, Kucherov going not even half speed, 20% speed through a stick handling drill because he's making a mockery of it because he doesn't want to be there, which I don't blame him. Who wants to be there? But instead, now this year, it made for great TV and it got a lot of viewers and eyeballs for the NHL. But you took a Stanley Cup final series and you just said, this is now in February. I hope everybody's ready to just flip it from, pretty high speed to the highest level of possible. You were going full tilt here. And now it's like, well, let's bring it back because you've got the Red Wings on Saturday. You've got the Blue Jackets on Tuesday. Like, not the same competition as Team Canada. So.
Sure.
It was great to watch.
I got one question.
Yeah.
Do you think Bill keeps it closer to the vest in respect to Kaprizov to also keep Kaprizov happy because Kaprizov does not want to be ruled out for the regular season in any respect? You know what I mean? Because I think that's also a large part too. Like I haven't seen Kirill around too much. I saw him once or twice now. And you know that he's more pissed off than anybody else, right? And there's nothing he can do about it. There's nobody that he can directly be mad. But I think anytime Bill approaches the conversation or topic of being like, hey, man, let's wait it out the regular season. You can still be with the team. You can still practice. You can still do all of this. You'll come back for the playoffs. And Kirill's like, no, why would you do that? Right? Like, I wonder if that's a large part of it. Like, I think Ek or Brodeen would accept that fate a little bit. Like, not easily, but I think they'd be like, yeah, you know what? You're probably right. Let's do that. Where I think Kaprizov refuses. And right now, as we've talked about at length, you got to keep Kirill happy heading into the summer.
And you could tell him like the thing with Ek is I'm sure if you went to Eriksson Ek today and said, we're shutting you down until the playoffs, he'd be pissed off, but he signed long-term.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, okay, you go be mad. You go down to a parlor bar, get a burger and a beer and be mad. But you're right on Kaprizov. This is a fine line. And we also have, and look, this is purely speculative, okay? But we also have no idea really when this happened. He came back for 3 games. Was that a mistake? Like there's a lot of things, again, from a doctor standpoint, and I don't know, but we don't know. So like if he already is predisposed to being told, hey, the Wild screwed X, Y, or Z up, you got a great point, Jessi, because if his like last thing is, hold on a second, you're telling me now I'm done until the playoffs. And in his mind, he's probably thinking that the team could still miss the playoffs without him. I don't think that they're going to, but being a fiery competitor. So yeah, I think when Billy was talking, I just sensed there was a lot at work in his mind that we're not privy to. And
Yep.
you probably hit on the most important thing, because if Kaprizov's really pissed and it's like, hey guys, you know what? One more year and I'm out, you got problems.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because as we've seen, I mean, I'm sorry, we are privileged to get to go to National Hockey League games for free, and I do not take that for granted, and it's awesome. But Sunday was like having my eyes poked out with toothpicks. Like that's life. That's life in the old. That was a Jacques Lemaire game
Yeah.
when Gabrick was hurt.
And that was when games you could get a ticket in the upper bowl for like $28. Now that
It was $10.
it was $10. Yeah, that shows my age.
The ends were $10.
But yeah, and that was boring. Like Judd, I look over and Judd is just, this is like Judd. It's the third period. They're trying to hold on to a lead. Wake up!
Awful.
Terrible.
That was awful.
It was
It
bad.
wasn't fun.
Terrible. Final question, Jessi Pierce. Do you think that the Carolina Hurricanes move Mikko Rantanen again by Friday, since they made this huge trade with the Avs and planned to extend him, and it sounds like extension talks have gone nowhere? And if the Hurricanes don't move him and he leaves, that would be back-to-back years. Gensel, deadline deal, Rantanen, deadline trade, and both of them leave.
I
What do you think?
forgot you about Gensel. That's right. I totally forgot that one. Nice pull there, Judd. Good little memory. Yeah, I think you have to trade him. You'd be stupid not to at this point. Like, unfortunately, it didn't work, but Mikko doesn't want to be there. He's not feeling the Carolinas, apparently, which is weird because again, I would love to play for Rod the Bod. I think he would be a fantastic coach. I think their GM plays fairly smart. It's weird, but yeah, you've got to move them part ways. Otherwise you're losing it. You've lost completely.
Yes.
So yeah,
Yes.
you got to move them part ways by
Where?
Mikko. And I don't want him, for the record. I don't want him
Where?
here in Minnesota. Not that it's
Oh,
not
no,
him, but I
no.
don't want him. I'm
You
just
want
saying in
him-
general, I don't want him on Minnesota ever.
In general, oh, ever.
Ever.
Okay, I was gonna say
Yep.
not like right now, but like
No,
July,
I don't
like
want him.
July 1st.
I don't want him. No. No.
Do you like him?
I don't.
What type
I
of
go back to
snarky
the room.
comment has he made to you?
I don't think that he would fit the locker room. That's all I'll say. I just don't think he
Whoa.
would. He's a little surly.
Okay, well,
Not wrong.
give us more.
That's all I
just-
got. That's all I got. It's just that,
You're in opposing
I
locker rooms. This is
that's-
great.
yeah, I know. I don't think he'd fit the locker room
So-
vibe.
So a jerk.
No, he's not.
bit of a
He's
jerk?
not a jerk. He's not. He's a Russian, right? Like, so take that for what it is a little bit. But no, I just don't think he'd fit.
He's like,
I thought he was
I-
Is he
finished.
finished? He's finished.
think
Sorry,
he's
he's finished. I always, yeah.
It feels like a
Finished.
it feels like
He
a
feels
Russian.
like a Russian
Koivu.
name.
so he's Koivu.
Yes, he's finished. So yeah,
So
yes.
He's got no
Mikko.
personality.
Mikko and Mikko.
He's personality-less.
A little bit.
Koivu was 100%
Just a
At
wet
least-
blanket.
in the room. He was a wet blanket.
He
How
thought
do
he
you
was
know?
the funniest person in that room all
Yeah,
the time,
and the-
though, and
and the
that's
Wild
what
got
makes me a
fooled.
little soft for Mikko.
Number 9 in the rafters now. We got fooled. Where would you like to see, or where do you think, if he is traded, Rantanen should go? I saw the Jets in a pretty big trade. I saw the Jets as a possible landing spot.
Jets could be the one. Where is LA sitting? Where are the Kings sitting right
They
now?
got drilled by the
They
Blackhawks
got
last night. Spencer
absolutely
Knight.
just embarrassing.
They
Tony
got to
has
make a shake, and they got to make a shake up. And also, I don't know how much credibility there was to this, but I saw like one or two reports that they're potentially looking to move on from a Quentin Byfield,
That's what you told me on Sunday. Yeah, I didn't know that.
22 years old. He's under term. Carolina, you don't have to then try to convince him. You got 4 years to convince him. Then at that point, make a little swap there. Why not? I mean, LA, that's a guy that could probably fit right in, and he's not going to probably flock at the idea of, oh, I'm going to be right in LA, right on the West Coast, catching some rays, and then me and Kevy Fiala can go out to the nightclubs and just
There's
dance
a
it up.
3-team trade that just broke. Did you guys
Oh,
see this?
No,
breaking
Like
news.
20 minutes ago now.
hit us.
To the Oilers, Trent Frederick and Max Jones. To the
Okay.
Bruins, the 2025 St. Louis second-round pick, the 26 Edmonton fourth-round pick, and defenseman Mac Wiener. I don't know, Wiener. To the Devils, the rights to Shane LeChance from Edmonton for retaining 50% on Frederick. There you go.
Interesting. So the Oilers make the
Oilers
trade.
with a conduit, or the Oilers make the Oilers get the player.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The conduit is. So that's
The
interesting.
conduit,
So the Oilers, since the tournament came to an end, have been sort of a mess. I think they did win a couple of nights ago, but I think they lost like their first 3 or 4 games. So that's interesting. That's interesting. The Oilers still have and I know that they got to game 7 of the finals last season, but the Oilers are still a conundrum to me because the goaltending, the goaltending can be good, but then it's not necessarily always good. And the defense to me is always suspect. That's really interesting.
Yeah, well, their big problem is they have so much money locked up in just 2 guys, and that's just, I mean, you can't win. You can't win a Stanley Cup like that, right, Jessi?
Stanley Cup that way.
Oh
I'm
my
telling
God.
you, Billy will see. He'll see my ways.
Oh my God. All right, with that, we'll be done. If you don't know what she's talking about, we'll talk about it sometime else. Not now. Jessi Pierce, AJ, I'm Judd. We'll see you later on Judd's Hockey Show.